Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, and welcome to my podcast Motivation Unleashed. I'm super excited to have all of you guys here with me today. This is the very first episode of my podcast. What I'm planning to discuss here today is about a key foundational habit which impacts everyone and it plays a key role in their success. So, what is this topic about? This topic is actually on habits. Look, there's a lot which I want to cover, so I am planning to break this topic into two podcast episodes. So, the very first one, I will be covering a few key areas around the fundamentals and what. So, starting off, it'll basically be about what are habits, what are the fundamentals, and what they actually are. Also, be talking about how habits are formed and how they are actually created in our brain and how they become a part of our day-to-day routines and our lives. I will also touch on why we need habits, why they're important to us, and why they play such a key role. And I will also be talking to you about what we can do to change habits, especially if you're one of those people who's dealing with, challenging or negative habits or bad habits, which is having a negative impact in your life. On the second episode, I'm actually planning to cover off more around how positive or negative habits will have a compounding effect on our lives and how they can make the difference between you having a highly successful and healthy life. It could be from your career all the way to your finances, all the way to your day-to-day life, and how bad habits can have a negative impact on all those aspects, and how it can bring you down and take you on this completely different path. So without much further ado, let's get straight into it. So let's start off with what is a habit. The definition of a habit is a settled or regular tendency or practice. So essentially, what they are a collection of behaviors which we accumulate into our lives over time from a very young age, right? It could be something as simple as us wanting to grab a coffee every day in the morning before you start the day. It could be grabbing a cigarette when you are feeling bored or when you're feeling stressed, all the way up to more complex habits like whenever you're faced with a social situation or a challenging situation where you just tend to run away from it, or you just tend to retract from it and be more of an introvert. So that is the range of habits. I mean, it can range from very small minor things all the way up to complex behaviors. So what we need to understand is that habits do not happen overnight. They start from our childhood and they are built up over time. And our family backgrounds, our social settings, our day-to-day, the routines or the lifestyles we have play a key role. And especially at a young age, what you see, what you observe around yourself, especially from your family, which is your foundation at that point in your life, you do catch on a certain habit. So these habits tend to build up over time. So, and as these habits build up, they eventually become second nature to us. So, why are we wired to have habits? There's a couple of key reasons for it. The first one being is the fact that our brains deal with so much of information on a day-to-day basis. Like especially if you look at the modern age, we have social media, we have our work emails, we have various platforms which keep sending us notifications, so many things which we get fed with so much of information. And the brain's way of filtering some of this information and optimizing itself is by adopting certain, almost like a degree of automation in what we do from a day-to-day basis. So here's a simple example, right? You get up in the morning, you get ready for work, you're brushing your teeth, you're putting your clothes on, you're doing all that. And sometimes, do you really think about it? In most cases, it's automated, right? You don't really go through it. You think about it, you just tend to go through the motions. Another example would be for those of us who are dealing with the daily commute. I mean, I myself, I deal with quite a lengthy commute every day or most days. And sometimes, when I get into the car, what I tend to do is, I put on a audiobook and I just listen to it. And I have like a fairly lengthy commute. So sometimes I'm in the car and I'm listening through this book. I'm just focused on the book. I'm driving. I mean, my attention is still on the road. I'm looking for all those things, but I'm not really thinking about it. And before I know it, I'm at work and I'm like, oh, okay, I didn't realize, I was at the end of my journey until I just drove up to the parking lot in my office, right? So that is how the brain does this, and the pure reason why it's done is so that it does not need to process the information all the time for all the minor details, especially our day work, right? Just it's too much work for the brain if it has to continuously think. I mean, imagine if you have to think about or focus on and go think about, oh, I need to brush my teeth, and then you need to go through a thought process for that. It'll be just too much for the brain. So what this essentially does is that it frees up your brain to focus on the more important tasks, where more thought power or more processing power is needed for the more important important parts in your life. So this strategy of the brain actually has many benefits to us, and it does, as I said, it optimizes our day-to-day mundane tasks, and then it allows us to focus on the more important tasks, which means that it frees up the brain power, and it actually allows us to function better in a more healthier way. So those are the fundamentals and the whole idea around, or the whole creation of habits, and why the brain uses this technique in our lives. So how are habits formed? There was a bunch of very smart people from MIT back in the 1990s who did some research on behaviors and habits. And what they found out is that it was a core neurological process which was involved in the habit formation. So they, after their research, they defined the creation of a habit into 3 core steps. And these 3 steps continue to function as a loop. So what were these 3 steps? The first one was a cue. The second one was a routine. And the third one was the reward. So this to combined formed what we call a habit. So the important thing is, for those who are out there who are dealing with let's say specifically negative habits, you need to understand these core principles of habit formation, right? So if I give you a very simple example of how a habit is formed, let's say you get up in the morning and you're feeling very sleepy and tired. And let's say you usually don't have coffee or tea or anything like that as a part of your routine, so you're feeling very sleepy, and you've heard all this, how caffeine actually boosts your energy and your brain gets switched on. So you decide, maybe because I'm feeling so sleepy, let me try and have a coffee in the morning. So what the cue would be, so in that 3-step process, the cue would be you feeling sleepy and you just trying to get more energy. The habit would be the routine for this cue would be where you actually get out of bed. You might drive to the nearby coffee shop and grab a coffee, or it might be a case where you actually make a coffee for yourself. So that's the routine. And the reward is you have that coffee, and all of a sudden you get this caffeine hit, and you feel like, oh wow, and you feel energized and you feel switched on, and you feel good about it. So that will be that reward part of it. So the cue, the routine, and the reward. So let me take this example for more of a more negative habit. So let's say you're hanging around and you're feeling bored, and you find your friends or your partner's pack of cigarettes lying around. You decide, what, I'm feeling bored, maybe I'll just give this one whiff. What harm can it do? So you light one up and you have the first whiff, maybe you cough a bit, you have the second whiff, and then you suddenly feel like You start getting this nice feeling because with the cigarettes you get that hit, that chemical hit from the cigarette smoke, and then it creates dopamine in your brain, which is a feeling of pleasure, which gives us feelings of pleasure and satisfaction. So and you're like, oh wow, I know this actually feels good. So that would be, again, if we take that three-step process again, the cue would be you feeling bored, and you're trying to get out of that boredom. The habit would be you taking the routine would be you taking a cigarette out of that pack, lighting it up, and then just having a smoke. And the reward would be that dopamine hit, or that feeling good sensation you get in your brain. So that is how, in most cases, habits are formed. So the challenge which most of us have in our day-to-day lives is, how do we change our habits? For those who are having positive habits, of course, that's a good thing in your life, and it'll help you. But what if you're dealing with a very negative habit? People think, okay, let's take an example of our smoking example again. So people think, if I just stop this, I'll stop smoking. I'll stop smoking from day one. But what you need to realize is, do you think it'll really work? So if we take that previous example of that habit loop, I'm going to call it habit loop now. If your brain is designed to work in certain sequences and certain patterns, right? So that smoking habit you have, there is a pattern to it. There is a sequence or a loop, a sequence which continues to loop. So if you just decide you're going to take away that reward component, which is you're taking away that feeling of feeling good from taking the cigarette out of that equation, it's really not going to work, because then your your brain essentially will try to reinforce that habit, because it's processing that loop for you, and your brain will still demand that satisfaction and that craving for feeling good, or that dopamine hit you get from that smoking that cigarette, right? So simply stopping the reward is not the answer. So how would you actually do this? Look, it's not as straightforward as the way I'm going to suggest, but it is going to help, right? So you need to look at that habit and then decide. So that feeling good component of that habit, what can you potentially replace it with? So if we take a cigarette, maybe can we look at replacing it with something else? So for an example, let's take that same habit again, your cue, which is you're feeling bored, and then you decide, okay, so then immediately the cue triggers the second step of that process. So the routine, so you go and instead of grabbing a cigarette, maybe you think about grabbing a healthy snack, or something which tastes good. It could be some kind of a cracker, maybe a cheese and cracker, maybe some kind of a drink, and then you just have that instead of that cigarette, right? So essentially what you're doing is you're not breaking that loop or that habit. What you're doing is you're introducing a different component to that reward component. So instead of having that cigarette, you have a snack instead. So or it could be a simple thing as essentially you're feeling bored, and that's what's cueing that habit. So maybe you replace it with, you try and watch a movie, or you're feeling bored, and you just go out for a jog, maybe just a 10-15 minute jog, and you come back, and after that you have a nice wash, and your whole body feels good, you feel energized, and you still get that dopamine hit to your brain, because you're feeling you feel like you've done something positive, you feel like you've done something good, something healthy, and that completes that reward part of that loop. So trying and replacing that reward component is a key way of trying to change habits. It's not as straightforward. You might go through a transition process. The way I usually approach a problem is, if I want to change something, I don't go smack dab and try to change it straight away. I do try to take it in stages, so that maybe the first day I have maybe a half a cigarette, instead of when I'm trying to change my habit, maybe I have half a cigarette, and maybe after 1 or 2 days I slowly phase out and I completely get rid of that cigarette and I introduce a snack or that new or that other thing which you want to do, right? So it's obviously it's always a phased out process. It's never really straightforward where you just go ahead and try to do it, right? So why is changing habits so difficult? It's again, it's not easy, right? I mean, people, if you take that smoking example again, people want to shake off a habit, and sometimes they might even know that it is a bad habit. They try to quit, and it's usually their approach. They try to take away that rewards component, that craving completely away, and it's like, I'm not going to have a cigarette anymore, or I'm not going to have this unhealthy food anymore. And you just try to completely, almost like stop your craving straight there, like almost you're hitting a blank wall, and you're expecting it to work. And the way our brains are wired, the way our bodies are wired, it's just going to fail. So you're essentially setting up to failure. I mean, a good example of this, people setting up New Year resolutions. At the start of each year, they're so motivated, they're full of energy, and they're thinking, you know what, I'm going to stop, from this year onwards, from the start of, January 2024, I'm going to stop smoking, or from January 2024, I'm going to stop being, having all these unhealthy, sugary foods. I'm going to work out, I'm going to focus. And they're so motivated, the gyms make a lot of money because people go and get signed up for all these gym memberships. And then, they maybe go for the first week. Yep, it's hard, it feels good. The second week, you're still feeling a little motivated. By the third week, half the gym is empty again, because that motivation has died down, and people go back to their habits because they still have those cravings which are so core to their being that they need it, right? So I see this a lot with some of the classes I attend. I mean, I do go to gym, I do train in martial arts. And some of the things I see is that whenever I go to the gym, I see at the start of the year, there's this massive hit of, a massive group of people who come in and they're ready to train. They're motivated. January 1st week, gym is filled up. The second week, maybe 50% of that crowd is there. By the third week, it's back to the original bunch of guys. There might be one or two motivated people out of that whole bunch who actually want to stick around and do it. So, and usually what happens is it's hard. Changing habits is hard, and you need to understand what a habit is and how it functions in order to for you to try and break it and change it. So in most cases, what I find is that people have that lack of understanding. So through this discussion, I hope you understand that the three key concepts of an habit, which is the cue, the routine, and the reward. So you need to work with these three components. You need to try and introduce new rewards, and you need to really sit down and understand how habits are formed before you can actually go and try and change them, right? So I'm hoping what I'm talking to you about on this topic and you understanding the fundamentals of habits will actually help you achieve this. So I guess the biggest question is, what is the process of changing a habit, right? I mean, we've talked about what a habit is, a definition of a habit, how they tend to be formed throughout our lives. And I've also talked about each component of how habits are formed and why people find it so challenging, right? So the first start with any problem, and with most problems, you look at the problem, you analyze the problem, and you see you see what it is, right? So if we look at that example, I mean, let's take another example. Let's say you're someone who's dealing with eating unhealthy snacks, and maybe you're what people call a stress eater, or maybe you're someone who gets bored, and then you need to have a snack immediately, just to and it's not necessarily a healthy snack, an unhealthy snack, right? So you need to imagine, you need to analyze that habit. You need to understand what cues it. So take it, almost write it down, take a piece of paper and write it down. Whenever I have an unhealthy snack for myself, what is the reason? When does it occur? What actually drives me to do it, right? I mean, the routine could be anything. You preparing a food, unhealthy snack, or you just going and grabbing a fast food, which most of us tend to do. And then the reward component. So analyze the reward component carefully. What makes it so satisfying? What makes you crave for that reward, right? So if it's usually with unhealthy food, The one of the things is that when people have unhealthy food tastes so good, right? I mean, I love my share of snacks and burgers and pizzas and all of that yummy stuff. So I mean, so you look at your habit and you think, okay, all right, so when I have this healthy, when I have this unhealthy snack, what makes me want it more? Obviously, for most reasons, it's that taste, that taste you feel, and that sensation you get once you eat it. You're enjoying it. You get your brain sends out all these chemicals. You feel good, at least at the time. You feel full. You after eating that meal. So that's your reward component. The next thing I want you to do is I want you to take that reward and analyze it carefully. So think about it. What is this reward component? What impact is it having in my life? If it's an unhealthy snack or a drink, potentially what's happening is that it's impacting your health. And this, it might not happen, the first couple of months you start this bad habit. It might, not even the second year, maybe the third year onwards. Well, no, I mean, not even, I mean, towards the end of the first year, you might start seeing changes in your body. When you might, do some more research and understand in your own mind what the negative impacts of having unhealthy food, processed food all the time is. I mean, look, they have their place. I mean, I enjoy my unhealthy food or my fast food, my snacks, all the time. But I guess the challenging thing with the habit is that it tends to build up over time because you tend to keep repeating that habit, right? So and then so you need to analyze and understand the negative impact it will be having in your life, and you also try and make sense of, in the long term, what kind of potential negative impacts am I looking at. I mean, if you're already into a bad habit and you've been doing it for a considerable amount of time, you'll be able to see it, right? If you look back at 2-3 years, I mean, if it's unhealthy food, you might look back at yourself a couple of years. If you look at some of your older pictures and you look at yourself now, you might not be that same fella, because you've changed over time, because you might not be working out and you might be having unhealthy foods all the time, right? So you also need to focus on the cue and the cue part of that habit loop, right? So you need to understand what habits, what compels you to drive this behavior, right? You might need, what are you feeling at the time when you're actually craving this unhealthy food, and what reward are you after, right? So and my message and what I'm trying to tell you here is that you need to have full awareness of that habit you're trying to break. You need to break it down. You need to study it. You need to understand what's driving me to do this. What are the routines, and why am I craving this reward? What do I feel? What do I get? What's the benefit or the lack of benefit I'm getting out of it, right? So once you have that solid understanding of that whole loop, then you are actually empowered to change it, right? You can think, what, if what's driving me is this, the food which tasting good, maybe you can then analyze your habits, and then you figure out, okay, whenever let's say you're having food because you're getting bored or you're stressed, then you might think, what, as soon as these cues come into my, this cue which is boredom or stress comes into my life, well, I might do something different. I might change that reward component. I might make myself a healthier snack. I mean, there's plenty of healthy food which tastes really good out there, right? So I might try and do that. Or if I'm feeling bored, or if I stressed, I might just get, I might have a punching bag hanging in my garage, which I go and just punch a few things, or I do a few push-ups and sit-ups, and kind of change that, right? So do something to change that routine. So yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, the important thing is that when you're creating positive habits, as I said, you need to understand, and you need to do it with a positive mindset, right? I mean, every time I talk to people, even if it could be something as simple as going to the gym and getting into shape, right? So when I talk to people, they're like, oh, you know what, I tried it, but it's genetics. I'm not the kind, my body is not able to build muscles. It's just not for me. And you have all these negative things which you keep saying to yourself, right? And at the end of the day, it's your mindset, because your mind, what's up here, it's a very powerful tool, right? So if you are just constantly reinforcing yourself with negative thoughts and negative things, and you're saying, oh, I can't do this is not for me, I'm weak, I'm not strong enough, I can't go into the gym and actually work out because every time I try I don't see any results. So what you need to understand is things do take time. The important thing is that you need to be consistent in whatever you do. And the biggest problem in society, what I see today is that there's this, people want instant gratification, like everything needs to happen now, bam bam bam. I want to go to the gym, or I want to stop this bad habit now. But life, the way this world works, the rules of this world dictates that things take time, especially good things, especially if you want to achieve things, positive things in your life. Ironically, it takes longer, and it's kind of ironic because negative habits can be adopted pretty fast, but for you to build positive habits and get the results, you have to actually put in the work. So yeah, just have a positive mind, reinforce yourself, I can do this. Consistency is the key, and keep yourself motivated, right? I mean, listen to podcasts, read books on topics, positive things, so that you surround yourself with all these positive things, which keeps you consistent, keeps you going. Some of these content, these positive things which you read through or keep reinforcing to yourself acts like fuel to your brain, and it actually empowers you to help you get the things you need to do, right? So I think I've covered off quite a bit, but what I want you to remember is that the fundamentals of what I'm telling you is understand what your problem is first. Understand how your habit loop is created, what forms it, what's the cue, what's the routine, and what's the reward, and then work towards replacing it with healthier actions. So understand the problem and empower yourself so that you can make the right changes and get out of those negative habits and create the positive habits. So with that being said, that is the end of this episode for today. I'll be coming back to you with part 2 on habits in our next episode. So I hope I created some value for your life and your goals or whatever you're trying to achieve. So if you like the content you're hearing, please do subscribe to my podcast. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. I am also on Instagram on motivated.unleashed. So please follow me there, and please continue to support this initiative so that I can continue to bring more valuable content, more things which are positive to your life, which will hopefully help you, and that is my intention. So until then, stay motivated, stay positive. Have a great day, everyone.